When people picture Rome's downfall, they think of barbarian hordes breaching the walls, legions crumbling, or emperors poisoned in marble halls. But empires rarely collapse from outside blows alone. They corrode from within, and money is always one of the most corrosive forces. Rome didn't just decline because of invaders or political corruption, it collapsed because its currency failed. And the lessons of that monetary collapse still apply to every modern economy that believes it can manipulate money without consequences. Let's rewind. For centuries, Rome's financial foundation was the silver denarius. First minted around 211 BC, it was nearly pure silver and trusted across the empire and beyond. Soldiers received wages in it, merchants demanded it, and citizens hoarded it as savings. The denarius wasn't simply a coin, it was trust hammered into metal. Rome's might and the coin's value were inseparable. As long as people had faith in Rome, they had faith in its money. But running an empire was costly. Armies had to be paid, aqueducts and roads built, and endless wars funded. By the 2nd century AD, Rome was overextended, guarding borders from Germanic tribes, fighting Parthians in the east, and quelling unrest within. Taxes couldn't keep up with the bills. So emperors reached for an old trick: debasement. Rather than raise taxes, always unpopular, they diluted the silver content of the denarius. The figures reveal the decay. Under Augustus, at Rome's golden age, the denarius was about 95% silver. By Caracalla's reign in the early 3rd century, that purity had sunk to around 50%. By the time of Gallienus in the mid-3rd century, less than 5% remained. What was once solid silver had become bronze-coated with a thin wash of silver. People could see and feel the fraud. Inflation surged. Prices soared because the currency had lost its anchor in real value. Grain that once cost 1 denarius now demanded dozens. This was not abstract economics. It ruined ordinary Romans. Soldiers demanded higher pay to keep up. Merchants rejected debased coins, turning to barter or insisting on gold. Local markets reverted to trade because the money was no longer trusted. And the less people believed, the faster emperors churned out degraded coins, flooding the system with volume as value disappeared. A vicious cycle, repeated in countless inflations since. The disaster peaked during the crisis of the 3rd century. From 235 to 284 AD, Rome endured 50 years of chaos. Invasions, plagues, civil wars, and economic disintegration. Emperors rose and fell in months, so often murdered. Behind the turmoil was a broken financial order. Taxes were demanded in coins worth less each year. Farmers abandoned their land rather than pay. Trade networks unraveled. The state tried desperate fixes, from strict price controls to forced labor, to keep the system alive. None worked. Emperor Diocletian tried to stem the bleeding. In 301 AD, he issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, fixing wages and the prices of more than 1,000 goods, from wheat to clothing. Break the law, and the penalty was death. It failed catastrophically. Prices could not be frozen by decree when the money itself was rotten. Black markets thrived, and legal trade collapsed. People quickly learned that no edict could make bad money good. Eventually, Rome gave up on the denarius. Constantine the Great introduced the solidus, a gold coin of stable purity, around 312 AD. It restored some trust and endured in the Eastern, or Byzantine, Empire for centuries. But for the West, it was too late. By then, the empire's core was hollowed out. The debasement of the denarius had gutted Rome's economy. Armies faltered, trade collapsed, and trust evaporated. Rome's fall wasn't one single event but a long unraveling, and currency decay was one of its sharpest threads. What lesson does this hold today? That the destruction of money always signals the destruction of empires. Rome thought it could fool its citizens by striking coins that looked the same but carried less value. Modern governments believe they can do the same with paper money, interest rate manipulation, or printing away debt. But the end result is unchanged. Ordinary people lose, wealth evaporates, and trust collapses. Rome learned the hard way, and if we ignore that lesson, so will we. History didn't stop with Rome. Every major inflation since has repeated the cycle. Governments debase currency to cover costs, elites shield themselves with real assets, and the public is left impoverished. The Roman denarius is simply the first large-scale case, a prototype for collapse. Jump forward to the 20th century, and the echoes are deafening. After World War I, Germany was crushed under Versailles reparations. To cover its debts, the government printed marks, thinking it could inflate its way out, just as Rome once debased silver. By 1923, hyperinflation was raging. A loaf of bread that cost 1 mark before the war cost more than 200 billion marks by autumn. Families carted wages home in wheelbarrows, only to find the money worthless by evening. Workers demanded payment twice daily, spending instantly before prices doubled again. Savings evaporated. Middle-class households, the supposed backbone of stability, were ruined. And out of that ruin came anger, extremism, and eventually the rise of the Nazi regime. Germany had repeated Rome's mistake, trading trust in money for short-term survival, only to destroy both. Nor was Germany unique. In the late 20th century, Latin America became a laboratory of collapse. Brazil, Argentina, Peru, Bolivia. One by one they printed their way into crisis. In Argentina during the 1980s, inflation soared so high that prices doubled every few weeks. Shops tagged goods with stickers that peeled off easily, so clerks could raise them hourly. By 1989, annual inflation hit nearly 5,000%. The peso became so despised that people turned to US dollars for daily transactions, abandoning their own currency in practice if not in law. Zimbabwe in the 2000s was another grim echo. To cover reckless spending and political corruption, the government flooded the economy with paper money. Inflation reached astronomical heights. Banknotes of 10 trillion Zimbabwean dollars were printed, yet couldn't buy a loaf of bread. People carried bundles of cash in backpacks, but even that wasn't enough. Entire salaries were spent the moment they were received, because tomorrow the money would buy less than today. Trust in the currency disintegrated, and with it, trust in the state itself. Even advanced economies are not immune. In the United States, the dollar has never suffered hyperinflation on that scale, but the principle is the same. During the Great Depression, President Roosevelt confiscated gold in 1933 and devalued the dollar against it. Holders of paper money saw their savings shrink overnight by government decree. In the 1970s, after Nixon severed the last link between the dollar and gold, inflation roared to double digits. Oil prices spiked, wages lagged, and the purchasing power of ordinary families collapsed. The empire of the dollar, like Rome before it, was revealed to rest not on intrinsic value but on confidence alone. The pattern is universal. Money is trust, and when that trust is betrayed, societies unravel. Rome debased its silver, Germany printed marks, Zimbabwe flooded its economy with paper, and modern states manipulate currency and debt in ever more complex ways. But the result is unchanged. Ordinary people lose their savings, prices soar, trade falters, and political turmoil follows. Elites insulate themselves with land, gold, or foreign currency, while the masses watch their wages and pensions dissolve. The fall of Rome is not an ancient curiosity, it's a warning. Currency debasement is not a quirk of history but a recurring disease of empires. Every society that has believed it could conjure value from worthless money has paid the price in collapse. Rome thought that denarius would last forever. So did Weimar Germany with its paper marks, Zimbabwe with its trillion-dollar notes, and Argentina with its pesos. Each believed confidence could be commanded. Each was proven wrong. And today, as governments around the world print, borrow, and inflate to paper over their debts, we are walking the same dangerous path. The lesson from Rome, from Germany, from Zimbabwe, from every collapse in between, is brutally simple. Destroy the money, and you destroy the empire.